So as I say, I think that AI is a very big deal, and it will eliminate a lot of jobs. Perhaps,
90 million is a lot of jobs if it's accurate.
yeah. I don't know how much I trust all of those predictions, but I do think it's going to be a big number, and perhaps it's already starting to take place.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, the home of Googlization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy, never normal shift going on all around us. Our goal is to bring you ways to reimagine tomorrow and explore the ever-changing convergence of people, business, and technology. Here is your host, Ira Wolfe.
Well, buckle up, folks. The job market isn't just getting weird. It's doing cartwheels, flips, and turning itself inside out. I'm not talking about just a little disruption or a little bit of a shakeup. AI isn't just rewriting job descriptions, but creating chaos in both the jobs and labor markets. Immigration policy is reshaping the workforce. We're teetering on a demographic cliff, facing an education crisis, and the skills gap is widening and accelerating in scope by the second. The big question everyone should stop asking isn't what's next, but how weird will it get? To help us decode this weirdness and madness, I am thrilled to meet up once again with one of my favorite experts on labor market weirdness, Gad Levanon. Gad has been a frequent guest and good friend of the show, and he's back again today to help us make sense of the job and labor markets. Previously, Gad was with the Conference Board, where he was founder of the Labor Market Institute. Gad is currently the chief economist of the Burning Glass Institute, where he dissects and predicts the future of work like a seasoned time traveler. You've probably read his work in Forbes, seen him quoted in the national media, or hopefully subscribe to his Labor Matters newsletter on LinkedIn. Let's give a big Googlization welcome to Gad Levanon. Well, welcome back, Gad, to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. I think you now officially have the all-time record for guest appearances. You're almost at that point where you're a regular, maybe a co-host.
I got a membership.
Yeah, absolutely, and a lifetime membership. Anytime you want to come back, especially in these, as we were talking a little bit before, the never normal times. We're still within the first 6 weeks of 2025, and every day is a new never normal day.
Yeah, no, it is never normal. Yeah.
So much to talk about. You one is I'll put a plug in for your newsletter, Labor Matters. I highly encourage everybody to go up and subscribe to that and connect with you on LinkedIn. You're just a wealth of good information, good stats, good analysis, and sometimes it's the comments. Again, some pushback, some people that certainly aligned with you, some people that are not aligned with you. But there's always a good discussion to get a good 360 viewpoint on what's going on. So I encourage everyone to go up after this and subscribe. I'll connect with you and also subscribe. But there's so much to talk about. First, we're going to hit on AI, certainly the labor markets, jobs. But the title of the show is "How Weird Is the Job Market Going to Get?" So I'm just going to throw that out to you right now, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. But how weird is this job market going to be?
Yeah, there are certainly several factors that could make it very weird. The deportations or the lack of immigration that's likely to happen. AI. Every day I am more convinced that it's a big deal and will have a huge impact. The kind of the new administration and AI are making this a very unusual period.
So let's start with AI. Again, and we'll get into some of the immigration policies, trying to stay away from some of the politics of this, because I think universally, I don't think, regardless of what party you belong to, or which ethnic group, or where you stand in geography, I think everybody agrees that our immigration policy needs to be improved.
Hmm.
That there were flaws in it, and it certainly needs to be upgraded. Now, the pathway to get there, we're going to try to stay away from that today, and just talk about the impact, for employers, what that means, and employees. Also, the job, it could open the job market because of demand for that. But let's tail that back, because one of the arguments is that we doesn't really matter if we deport 11 million people, because that means that we will have more people, more U.S. born citizens or naturalized citizens will be eligible to take those jobs. But that doesn't solve some of the problems, because then we get the skill gaps. We still have a demographic cliff. We have new types of jobs. But let's go back to the basics. I still hear this. I was at the gym yesterday, and two 50-year-olds who were there. We chat all the time. One is a lineman for utility companies. His job is probably safe, although it might change, the people behind that. But his job's probably safe until he retires. There's a shortage of linemen. There's still a lot of reasons to have them. The other gentleman worked for a utility company. He was in pollution control. Again, we need a lot of energy. We're going to have a lot of new utility plants, whether it's nuclear, gas, coal, whichever. We won't get into that. And he says no one could, and his comment was, no one could take my job. Probably in his career, maybe not, but the job will change. The skills that are required are likely to change significantly for him. So let's go back. Let's start at the basics. When you hear that AI is going to take your jobs, and all these forecasts for 2030 that are out there, within 5 years, I think it was the World Economic Forum just released their future jobs report. They said that I think it was 171 million new jobs would be created. That's the good news. The bad news is 90 billion jobs would be eliminated, something in that range. So everybody's focused on those 90 million jobs, but we're going to create 2 times more, which is what happened in every disruption that we've gone through in the past. But that requires huge skill changes. Or skill gaps. So let's address that. I know there's a lot to unpack there. So let's first talk about this overriding threat of AI in the next 5 years. So let's look over a 5-year span, over 2030. What are you seeing? And then leading into the skill gaps that are being predicted. Just by the way, I'll throw in one other stat just to kind of deal with that. The World Economic Forum has their prediction is that 44% of all employees will have to learn significantly new skills. So again, a lot there. That's the premise of what we're talking about, and that will guide our conversation. So on to you.
Yeah. So as I said, I think that AI is a very big deal, and it will eliminate a lot of jobs. Perhaps
90 million is a lot of jobs if it's accurate.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much I trust all of those predictions, but I do think it's going to be a big number, and perhaps it's already starting to take place. Like especially in the tech area, there's been a lot of layoffs, and even like overall employment cuts, like a smaller number of workers in companies that are, in terms of revenue, are growing very rapidly. So I think it's certain at this point that AI significantly improves coding and makes the coding faster, and other related jobs as well. So we are already seeing fast productivity growth in the past 2 years, and one could debate how much of it is because of AI, but probably some of it already is. I think it in the future it is. I've been working with um, O3, which is the most advanced version of ChatGPT, uh, and I'm quite amazed by this. It's like working with another person, and so I think a lot of jobs and tasks could be eliminated. Originally, like until like half a year ago or so, I thought that most of the impact will be in office-related jobs, but it also turns out that AI is having a big impact on robotics. And I think that could lead to also elimination of a lot of manual jobs. In manufacturing, there was a huge uh, elimination of jobs because of robotics up to 2010, and then there was a break. There was much less so, but it seems like are becoming more. Robots are becoming more sophisticated, could do a lot of things that they couldn't do before. So I think even many jobs in the manual economy is also at risk.
There's so much in there. My mind was just racing as you were
Mhm.
talking. Just last night, I was watching a video by from Mo Gadat. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was head of Google X, was at
Mhm.
Google a long time. So he was talking about coding. As he said, I mean, he's been coding since he's 8. I believe Mo is in his 50s somewhere,
Mhm.
so quite a long time. And although he has said that he's able to keep up with most coders. I mean, he's still more advanced than most. He's unable to keep up if he wasn't using AI. Uh,
Mhm.
and it still takes that discernment, that critical thinking, that deep thinking to analyze, to ensure that the code's in the right direction and the spot errors and things. But as far as creating it, he said that he cannot keep up with young people who are versed in AI. Although he's
Mhm.
a coder and versed in AI, he can't keep up with those who have learned to just do that. And
Yeah.
and again, the AI is just going to be able to drive that. But what are some of the other jobs? I mean, a lot of marketing has been allocated. So copywriters, designers, it's just incredible. Even creating podcasts probably.
Mhm.
He was predicting that and this was just maybe 2 months ago that video was recorded. He was predicting that a year from now, um, that there'll be an avatar, that he'll be able to do a presentation as an avatar. Although we were predicting as a hologram in the past, but now as an avatar to be able to do that, so it's going to be seriously impacted. What are some of the other what are some of the jobs that you're seeing as the biggest threats now?
I think so. The coders we already mentioned. I think a lot of um, office job like clerical and back office jobs that were already automated significantly in the past 20 years. It will be further penetration of AI there. Um, Accountants. Essentially, the way kind of my rule of thumb is that the AI, where it will become more or most useful, is a task that you think that a human being can do if they had like 10,000 hours of work. The AI can do that in a few seconds. So those are the tasks that AI can do much faster than humans. Um, that like, I can give you an example from my organization. So we have a lot of online job ads and online career histories, and we need to classify them by occupation or industry or things like that. That's something that uh, we needed like humans to do that. and then like all kinds of other um, machine learning that where we identify the rules and then the computer executed it. But now it came to a point where you can just give like a job ad to AI and it will understand the context, it will understand everything and will classify it for you. Um, and will do that for millions of job ads in a few minutes. So those are the kinds of things that AI will excel at, and that kind of tasks that where humans could be easily replaced.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I was while you were talking there, it just spurred a moment. There was one of the questions I had popped up here was about generative AI, and they said generative AI job postings are up 15,000% within the last 2 years because because it's available. But and this was from a cybersecurity point, so it might have come from I think you might have even been on one of the panels with us with Avanti, which
Hmm.
is a cybersecurity company. That 80, even though that the generative AI postings are up 15,000%, 83% of cybersecurity jobs are unfilled.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, well, there are a lot of types of jobs that because um, the usage of AI is increasing the demand for certain jobs dramatically, and cybersecurity are one of them because much more is cyber now, so you need more security. Um, is so yeah, we are also seeing strong demand for certain jobs because of AI.
So going back to our original question, how weird is it going to be?
Mm.
It, it's going to be it's going to feel weird because it's going to be so different. And
Yeah.
and again, I think we're going back to something. I've been in this space for 40, well, in this space for 30 years, in the job market or being in the labor force for 45 years. And I don't ever remember a time going back to the early 80s that we haven't been talking about skill shortages or
Hmm.
job skill shortages. Certainly back then, as we knew there was going to be a demographic cliff, but we didn't. But we're here now. Uh, but it seems that the skill gap is the bigger threat with that.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
So, so as you know, I've been studying the topic of labor shortages for in the past decade because it was a big deal and reached its most extreme level around 2022, 2023. Um, so I always thought that this is a big risk. Now I am kind of less sure. On the one hand, we have and I'm differentiating between labor shortage and skill shortages. I'll get to skill shortage in a minute, but we have the retirement of the baby boomers, which was the main reason for the labor shortage in the past 7, 8 years. Um, and this is still ongoing, probably for the next 5, 7 years. A massive retirement of baby boomers. Um, so if we didn't have generative AI, I probably would be sitting here and saying that this is the main concern moving forward. But something changed in my opinion because I am now much more optimistic about how AI can impact the world, and I think it could eliminate so many jobs that rather than having a labor shortage in the coming years, we will have the opposite of relatively um, high unemployment rates, relatively slack in the labor market, um, and I'm not sure that this would be the case. Those are two opposite forces that are um, against each other. It's not clear which one would be stronger, but I think like if I 3 years ago I was quite certain that we will have labor shortages. Now I'm much less certain, and I think we should also be prepared for a situation where we will have the opposite of a weak labor market. Um, I but that would mean that a lot of jobs would be eliminated and people would move to new jobs. And um, I think those new jobs will be ones where AI cannot really automate or can automate less, and jobs where we've seen an increase also in recent years. So I would say like two top candidates are healthcare and what's called social assistance. So those are nursing homes and childcare and um, all kinds of institutions like that. I think those there will be um, less AI disruption in those because the personal touch would be still very important. And I think those were already on an upward trend before. A lot of it is because of the aging of the baby boomers. You know, um, as we get older, we need more people to take care of us on average, and especially when we get to like the 80s, 90s, and very soon the oldest baby boomer is going to reach 80. I think it will happen next year. Um, so then this is the peak age when health services are needed. So we are going to see a lot of increase in that. Also, I think when societies get richer, they spend more on healthcare and social assistance. So there will be a lot of new jobs in those sectors.
There's so much there to unpack, especially
Yes.
coming from healthcare, because when
Yeah.
you look at how healthcare is always identified as one of the industries that'll be most impacted by AI. So when most people hear about that, they think it's going to eliminate all those jobs. But again, we're going to need so many more people. Just the logistics of using AI for scheduling,
Hmm.
for diagnostics, the impact of AI on pharmaceuticals, where it was taking 10, 15, 20 years to do some of the research. Now 6 to 12 months,
Hmm.
that there can become drugs. And I know there's this whole debate about, well, what about the safety? What about the trials? It takes time to test it on humans.
Hmm.
But if the algorithms are that much more predictive, and there's more people in more data in there, then that may help. So I think there's probably somewhere between the 1 and the 10 years. But even if it was cut down by half or 2/3, that's going to be significant. But all that creates jobs,
Hmm.
because it's like I remember, and again, as an older baby, one of those older baby boomers who's technically semi-retired, but still working and still functioning. Um, it's it's interesting because I've certainly kept up with my skills where most of my peers don't, or haven't. They're still love their flip phone, and I'm sitting with 15 versions of AI on my browser. So there's that craziness, there's that weirdness there. But it was really interesting what you said, because it's going to change the jobs. It will create. There's definitely people that will be out of work, but it's going to create a whole new job set that we haven't. Many of jobs that we haven't even thought about yet.
Hmm.
We haven't even considered. So when you're talking about a less tight or a softer labor market, that almost says that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is there could be a huge demand with a lot of unfilled positions, because the people who are being laid off don't necessarily have the skills, and many, unfortunately, don't have the desire to learn those skills to get the new jobs.
Hmm. Yeah. During the manufacturing years, when the elimination of or reduction in manufacturing, people said, well, manufacturing workers can become nurses. And I don't know, I'm sure there were a few, but it wasn't like a major success story. I think it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
The the shift in skills, like from so are now a lot of coders are going to lose their job. Are they going to become nurses or social workers? I'm not sure. There will be, I think, it will be a period of difficult transition.
Well, but that's interesting, and this I guess fits in line with that conversation about the job skill. So you have a bunch of coders, and again, one's sitting in their basements, or
Mhm.
certainly working remotely and doing a lot of coding. But with the shift in healthcare, as healthcare becomes more reliant on the AI, it's unlikely they're going to become the nurses in the framework and format that we know what nursing is.
Mhm.
But if we have more telemedicine, if we have more remote medicine, if there's more, between apps and monitors and sensors, it's looking at all the other technology that's developing, from 3D printers, 3D printed body parts, to basically monitoring, through different types of sensors. Somebody
Mhm.
has to code that. I mean, the
Mhm.
AI may produce it, but there's even creating the application. We're not yet quite there yet, and maybe someone like Mo Gadot or somebody on the inside would say, "Oh yeah, we've been there for 10 years. It just hasn't come to the market yet." But it seems that there still could be a market for coders, not in the traditional, you just know HTML or a certain language, but if they can combine that with some AI skills, then it'll be a different job. It won't. It's not weird. It's just different when it
I,
starts
I,
to show
I think
empathy.
I think it will happen at some point, but probably not in the next 5 years.
No,
Yeah.
let's shift the conversation just a little bit from the AI and talk about the immigration, because how does that fit your predictions, your forecasts? I won't say predictions, but your forecasts. How is that fitting into this conversation of the labor market, demand for jobs, skilled labor, many different components?
So it definitely works in the direction of making the labor market tighter. It's all a question of the degree of how much, if they deport 10 million people, it's different than deporting 100,000 people. The impact, and we still don't know how many, if it's going to be closer to 100,000 or it's going to be closer to 10 million. And so it's all a matter of magnitude, but the direction is clear. Some will be deported. There will be many fewer um, border encounters. Fewer people will cross illegally, um, and that will impact especially the types of jobs that rely on undocumented workers, and in the locations where they are. So, in many parts of the countries, they are a small percent, but in the border states, in Florida, New Jersey. For some reason, New Jersey is full of undocumented workers. I don't know why, much more than the states around it. Um, in those areas and in occupations like constructions and agriculture and maintenance and cleaning, those are, undocumented are a significant part of the labor market. So I think there will be a shock now in those occupations. I don't know if a huge shock or a big shock, but they will see supply of workers declining significantly, and that will create challenges there.
When you talk in New Jersey, it was interesting to me as well. And until you just mentioned that, is curious why. Certainly, tons of construction, especially the northern parts of New Jersey, adjacent to New York. Migration of a lot of people from the city, New York City,
Hmm.
over to New Jersey. A lot of businesses, so a lot of construction. So I assume that could be part of that. Though construction certainly been heavy on the immigration. Maybe you have some research that can confirm that, but also hospitality. I mean,
Hmm.
you look, the Jersey shoreline, all the way almost to the city, but certainly down central part of New Jersey, southern part of New Jersey, is all hospitality. It's all driven by
Yeah.
that. And again,
Yeah.
there's were industries that were highly impacted that. So that would be, my
Yeah.
common sense answer to that. I
Yeah.
have no data to back that up, but I assume that be true. But also interesting because Florida, Texas is certainly, reportedly, according to their governor, as the fastest growing economy in the country, if not the fastest growing. It's certainly there. With the emphasis on AI, we need more data centers, we need more utility, more energy. Um, you're going to have an influx of people, so that means you need construction workers.
Hmm.
And Texas was always one of the construction industry was driven down there by a lot
Hmm.
of undocumented workers.
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting paradigm or a challenge for them to deal with that. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I think there will be a big difference between liberal states and conservative states because with all the deportation, uh, liberal states are not going to cooperate and they are not going to make it easy for their undocumented to be deported. But in conservative states, I think it's much more likely to happen. So maybe in California and New Jersey, there will be much fewer deportations than in Texas and Florida, for example.
Right.
So that could also make a big difference.
But for Texas, by an economy driven by um, construction, I mean, building up and the influx of new people. So whether it's residential or commercial or
Hmm.
industrial construction, if you have these deportations, it's not a safe state to basically migrate to.
Yeah.
Then what
You know,
happens?
so as I said earlier, like I don't know if it will be 100,000 or 10 million, but I think there will be a lot of people and organizations and companies that will push the administration not to deport so much because it will be catastrophic for their business. So let's see how many people are actually deported, how much
Right.
of it is
Have
kind of
poster children, have poster children for
uh,
immigration or
headlines,
deportation.
deportations that catch the headlines versus massive deportations. I think that's yet to be seen.
A couple other questions, and we'll come back to see what we missed here. A question I've been asking other guests, and it's been really interesting um, to to kind of to hear from people like yourself. What's the biggest myth about the future of work, whether that's labor or jobs, that needs to die, like right away?
Uh, so I don't know if it's still a myth, but probably I would say like a decade ago it was a big opinion I would say or view that the gig economy is likely to take over the world. I remember even um, some consulting companies, I'm not going to name names, but they said that everyone besides the C-suite is going to become a contingent worker or a gig worker, and only the C-suite will remain employee. I think like a decade later, it's certainly not the case. There may be some increase, but I think, and maybe in the future we'll still see some growth in the contingent workers share, but I don't see a reason to think that it will become like the main type of work arrangement, like some predicted.
So, I mean, there's also been this push, and there's two parts of this question, coming from the going from return to the office versus the remote work, and we saw this huge shift. Is the current um, initiatives, the current mandates, do you see that as a blip, or are we reverting to, are we really going back to office workers, commuting every day.
I we definitely not going to pre-pandemic levels. Like the share of remote work will definitely remain higher. But I am not surprised that we are seeing a lot of return to office happening. And the reason is that um, I think many companies want to avoid the perception of being like, I would say, soft or not ambitious. I think there is a perception that people who don't mind coming to the office are more ambitious and perhaps better workers, um, and kind of workers will like when a company decides that they are an office company, then people who are ambitious will self-select into those companies. Um, and after a while, those companies they will have a stronger workforce, and they will gain market share versus their competitors who remain remote companies. And I think that will or is already making some companies want to return to the office because they think they don't want to be the remote worker option. They want to be the ambitious worker option, and uh, I think that I think a lot of companies they feel like if you are not don't want to if you want to be here and make this company great, then you have to come to the office. If not, you don't belong here, and so we are seeing more and more of that.
That's really interesting because where companies are having that input, and again, there could be that I'm losing out on opportunities because I'm not there, for whatever whether that's valid or not. The reverse is, and again, playing the devil's advocate on that, is do the companies that go to remote or go to a mandate of return to the office 5 days a week, which brings up a distinction, by the way. We talk about remote work and then there's flexible work. So flexible work is that you don't have to be there 8 to 5. If you have childcare issues or you need to take off for a day, you can work remote. But we do desire that you're in the office most of the time, and especially there for important meetings. And I'm not sure remote workers had a problem with that. So I want to distinguish between remote and flexible. But if you require that as a mandate that you have to be here 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever it is, 4 or 5 days a week, then are the companies at risk? Or maybe this is something you need to follow in the future. Are the companies at risk for losing their top talent? And the people who have nowhere else to go need a paycheck. They can't afford either because their skills aren't up to par. Maybe their partner or their spouse has issues that they can't move to a new location. Whatever it is, do they risk losing the talent? And what they're left with is kind of average, mediocre workers, people that are near retirement that aren't ready to kind of chance being put out the pasture.
And they definitely will lose some talent, but I think the way they perceive it is that the best and most ambitious workers are going to be willing to come to the office, so they are willing to live with some of the talent that they are going to lose. I think it also depends a lot on the industries, like industries that have like high level of competition between companies. There we may see more of return to office than um, industries where there is less competition, like you mentioned earlier, utilities, for example, um, or companies that operate in one location where they are like a monopoly in that location and have less competition. maybe there we will see non-for-profits. Um, Maybe there we will see more remote work than I would say in like the kind of the cutthroat industries with the high levels of competition.
Well, we see an impact from the, if the Doge um, mandates go through, at least partially. Will we see how much will an influx of federal workers into the marketplace shift the uh, labor markets and job markets?
I so first of all, I think this would be a very interesting period for the DC area. I think it may be the first time that like a major metro area would see such a change in demand for work. Like, we had that in during the manufacturing shrinkage period, we had a lot of cases where, um, a small town had a manufacturing
Mm-hmm.
plant and then it closed. But I don't think we ever had it in such a short period of time in a major metro area. And I think we may be having this first experiment now in the DC area. So I think the DC area would be significantly impacted. A lot of people would lose their job or quit their jobs in the federal government and look for other jobs. It's not a good time to look for a job now in the DC area. Um, I think other areas, some will be impacted, but the federal government, like the probably amount of workers that eventually would lose their jobs is probably, I don't know. I would be surprised if uh, more than like 300,000 people would actually lose their job.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, so I think nationally over like several years, 300,000 is not a big number. So the overall impact on the U.S. economy would be limited, but in the D.C. area,
Mm-hmm.
it will be unprecedented. Yeah.
Let's start our kind of wrap up here.
Mhm.
I asked you, what's the one thing people didn't want to hear? Is you probably have more contact with senior management leaders, working with the company. Is there something that you really struggle with that senior executives don't, even though you have all the data, you have the trends, they respect what you say, but they struggle with making the change. So
Yeah. I think, studies show that one of the main barriers for good digital transformation are the people themselves, the incumbents. Like they don't like to change. So I think in a period of big change, that's going to be uh, a major disadvantage for companies who have that problem. And I do think that it's a leadership question. If the C-suite or even the CEO don't think that a change is coming, it will be very hard to have a significant digital transformation in the company. And I think in many cases it will come with a lag. Like some leaders will not recognize that a change is needed quickly. And yeah, I think a lot of companies will hurt because of that.
yeah, this question came up, and I heard this on an interview. I wish I knew who. I can't remember what station I was listening to. It was in the car. It was a radio. It was streaming. Um,
Mhm.
but they commented on something that an economist, Robert Solow, had said, like in the 80s.
Mhm.
And again, this is timely now, only because we keep hearing of all this capex, all the investments that are going on in AI, but we haven't seen an increase in productivity, and that will ultimately be that. But when computers came online, back in the 80s, um, the statement was is we're not seeing a jump in productivity. We're seeing an increase in GDP, but we're not seeing an increase in productivity.
Mhm.
Are we at that same stage now? How will what will be the tipping point from an economist point of view for AI to be a significant driver in productivity?
So, it may already been happening. So productivity in the last year or two has been growing quite rapidly in the US, much faster than I would say the decade before the pandemic. Um, so it may already be happening, um, and the future is hard to forecast. But I do think that we are in the I mean, the adoption of AI is faster than the adoption of computers and the internet. Um, I think we already are in the beginning of a period of rapid productivity growth.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I can't imagine, again, and I know this only affects a portion of the population, but so far everyone's saying that the AI, the NVIDIAs and the all the related companies are are going on on the hopes that there will be productivity gains.
Hmm.
I can't imagine if the data starts coming out to support that AI is increasing the productivity and increasing the GDP, where those where some of those companies and stocks are going to end up.
Well, some of the gains in productivity, especially in a country like the US, which is a major tech hub, are not coming actually from regular companies adopting technology. It's coming from the technology producing industry. So
Mhm.
just think of like uh, cloud computing. Um, the revenues could double, and because more people need cloud computing, but you don't need twice as many people. You need barely any more people. So just think of like the productivity implications of that. Your revenue grows, revenue doubles, but your cost or the number of workers
Mhm.
that you need are growing only by 10%. So that's a lot of the productivity gains that we are seeing are actually coming from the technology producing industries.
Which becomes a society problem, which goes back to the unemployment. That
Yeah.
if we can get more work done, more and productivity is high, GDP's the economy is growing, but there's more people that are either unemployed or unemployable
Hmm.
um, because of that gap. But that's a society problem.
Yeah, and a rapid productivity growth because of AI also means a growing income inequality, because a lot of the gains are going to come to owners or top executives in tech companies, yeah, so we'll have probably an increase in income inequality. I also regionally there will be some areas that benefit more from it, and we talked about in the past about the Midwest. There's very little tech in the Midwest, unfortunately. Like manufacturing went down, but tech didn't come to replace it. Tech went elsewhere. Um, so that there will be some regional implications as well.
Yeah, unless they get data centers. So,
Yeah,
so a lot of open space
yeah,
to build
yeah,
data centers, for
yeah,
sure. Although they don't have a lot of nuclear plants nearby,
yeah.
out there to put back online. Uh, One last question. My kind of closing question is there something that we should have talked about that we didn't?
Yeah, well, I don't think we have time to get into it now, but
You're
DEI
welcome to
is
come back anytime.
DEI. There is a
Right.
major trends there, both in the workplace and education. Yeah, that's definitely a big topic.
Well, I'd love to have you back, and we'll continue the conversation on DEI. And I know you just wrote a great piece about the higher education rankings, which sort of got
Yeah,
into that. And I know you've had a lot of other input on that, and certainly that's a huge issue of being able to adapt for that. Gad, it's always an extreme pleasure to get your updates. And again, there's so many things I hear, and it's like I want to talk to Gad, get his opinion on it.
Yeah.
How can people? I mentioned earlier about your newsletter, LinkedIn. Is that the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, both LinkedIn and also check out the Burning Glass Institute webpage. We have all our new research and things there.
Yeah, some excellent white papers that are up there, and some monthly updates. Gad, again, wish you well. It's an exciting time where we used to be able to have you on once a year. We may have to have you on several times because the way the economy is shifting, and hopefully that you'll come back and have another conversation.
Happy to do so. I'm always enjoying our conversations, Ira.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
And for all our listeners, you can capture this episode and other episodes like this on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And until next time, don't let the shift hit your plans.
Thanks for watching Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. Be sure to listen to the podcast and follow us on YouTube.